Today I will introduce quite a difficult topic, but it's one that is directly related to your own mental health and well-being, and also your meditation. And this is about the rapid rate of change in modern society. As we know, then the speed of technological change in the 21st century is mind-boggling. And this leaves many people feeling like they can't keep up. We have this general belief that we want to stay informed and we don't want to miss out on anything. But at the same time, there's just too much stuff out there. And the advent of the social media age means that whatever useful information is there is generally buried underneath a lot of useless stuff, a lot of opinions, suppositions, and also disinformation. Now, this topic has been written about by many scholars and scientists. For example, Stephen Hawking. And he suggests that there are two rates of evolution. There's the internal transmission of our genetic information, and then there's the external transmission, and that would be the evolution of human knowledge and technology. Now, the problem is that basically our human genetics haven't changed significantly since we were cavemen. However, in the modern era, then the speed of technology and information is accelerating exponentially. In Stephen Hawking's own words, he says, mobile phones, medical imaging, satellite navigation, and social networks would have been incomprehensible to the society of only a few generations ago. Our future will be equally transformed in ways we are only beginning to conceive. I think this is something we're all quite aware of. And we're also aware that this current situation is having a really negative effect on our mental health, our peace of mind. Modern research overwhelmingly indicates that the rapid rate of change in the modern era is a major contributing factor to the rise in mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, and mental exhaustion. Now, the other problem is that we live in what is called the era of the attention economy. And so what that means is that your engagement with your streaming services, with your online buying platforms and social media is something that can be sold. It's a commodity. And so the more attention that you pay to a particular app or social media platform, then the more valuable it is to that company. And so they go out of their way to catch your attention. And recently, I've been staying in Germany. And here, unlike where I live in rural Canada, there's a really good public transport system. And so I've been traveling a lot on this. I can see how much time people are spending on their mobile devices. Now, some people might, for example, be learning a language or doing something quite useful. But the problem is that we're spending so much time absorbing information. And in the worst cases, then that information is quite harmful. For example, the dissemination of disinformation and negative political opinions. Of course, we know that these things lead to violence and social unrest. And so it's not only a challenge to our own mental health, it's potentially something that could be the cause of human social collapse. Now, that might sound like science fiction, but there are already the signs of this in our modern era. People have become so increasingly polarized, and it's led to something that we call the post-truth era. That means that nobody really knows what's true anymore. And part of this comes from our engagement. We are willing participants in this deception. And so not knowing what to believe anymore, we're very susceptible to emotive messages. As we know, we retain memories of trauma much more readily than we retain memories of positive experiences. And of course, there is an evolutionary advantage to this. If there's something that's life-threatening, then we damn well sure better remember that and not do the same thing again. However, when we're having a good time, things are quite relaxed, and the time might go very easily and we might not remember anything at all. So people are more easily stimulated by negative messages. And part of the problem is that these oligarchs, autocrats, disingenuous politicians use that against us. It's one thing to sympathize or identify with another's pain. It's a far more dangerous thing to identify with their outrage. And that's what's been happening. A friend of mine is a scriptwriter in Hollywood, and he at one point was invited to the Google offices. because they were helping them with some kind of application they were working on. And what he found there was the thing that has the greatest effect on the algorithm is outrage. We can see this is the case. Also, it seems currently that the world is basically on fire. And part of this is fueled by social media. As we know, there's been several revolutions in the world caused by something called the Gen Z movement. And this has primarily been spread over the internet, over social media. And I'm not saying what they're doing is good or bad, but there's great potential for harm here. And we don't know where this is going to lead to. The important thing is that we are complicit in this. I am not recording this video in order to point the finger at oligarchs and billionaires who own social media platforms. Of course, they have a responsibility, and they are complicit in this. They directly profit from our outrage, and it's in their interests, their financial interests, to promote this. As we know recently, then the basic position is that they should not be accountable. It's not their job to moderate. It seems to me to be quite insane. In some countries, they're doing what they can to limit the influence of the spread of disinformation on social media, but others see this to be a negative thing. For example, the White House claims this is a form of infringing on freedom of speech. It's kind of crazy world we live in. And as I said earlier, part of the problem is we don't know what to believe anymore. And there's something about human nature that we need to think about, and that is that we don't generally believe things based on logic or reasoning. We tend to believe things because of emotional reasons, because we are emotionally invested in something. Famously, as Blaise Pascal wrote, people almost inevitably arrive at their beliefs not on the basis of proof, but on the basis of what they find attractive. This is from On the Art of Persuasion. And this is an important point, because as long as we are governed by our emotions, especially our negative emotions, then this can go very wrong. And so many people these days are rejecting science and rejecting medicine. And they're doing so on the basis of their emotions. For example, recently, I gave a ride to a hitchhiker. And I always do this. I always pick up hitchhikers. I mean, it's safer in Canada to do this than in America. But when I was young, I used to hitchhike. So when I see a hitchhiker, I always pick them up. And the guy was complaining about vaccines and how they cause cancer. In fact, he was really upset with his friend. He said, why did he do it? Why did he take the vaccine? Because now he's just riddled with cancer. So he made this link, right? And then just after that, he excused himself because he needed to go and smoke a cigarette. Turns out he's a chain smoker. So it was kind of laughable that he had this belief that vaccines were a very strong cause of cancer, but at the same time, he didn't believe smoking caused cancer. And of course, smoking is far more carcinogenic than taking a vaccine. It's quite low percentage of getting cancer based on a vaccine, but a very high percentage of people get cancer based on smoking. So it's a kind of belief. It's something he wants to believe. And part of that is because he's emotionally invested in this narrative. And it's not like somebody has to create a narrative. For example, it's not like somebody like Putin or Elon Musk needs to create a false narrative and then spread that. I mean, it would seem like Elon Musk is pushing a particular narrative, but if we take the case of the Kremlin, for example, then they seem to push totally contradictory things at the same time. So it doesn't matter if somebody gives you an actual valid or solid narrative. The point is, in the modern era, what is happening is that we're being flooded with different narratives. And this stops us from being able to function effectively. We're all kind of traumatized by the overstimulation. And you can see this if you just go out in the street, go to work, public transport in the States or something like that, everybody's looking at their phones. And there is a backlash to this as well, because you do see people who are intentionally reading books on a train. Of course, it's easier to read a book on your phone. In fact, you can store many hundreds or thousands of books on your phone. But it's a kind of statement. It's like, I'm not going to be grabbed by my phone. I'm going to be grabbed by this book. The problem is in the modern era, there's just too much information. There isn't one single scientist who can specialize in one discipline alone, let alone their own field. It's very difficult to become learned these days. And at some point, we will no longer be able to keep up with the development of new information and technology. In fact, this will probably in the future be handled by AI. And this is also another dangerous thing. So how is this related to you, to your practice and your own mental health? Well, if we look back into prehistoric times, say the Neolithic era, there's a reason why we needed information, and usually it was to do with survival. For example, we needed to know if there was some threat over the horizon. Also, we wanted to know if the hunting party was returning to our camp, to our village. These were important things, but at that time the rate of information was very slow. We spent very little of our time absorbing information and much more time doing things like eating, finding food, and a lot of time just sitting in nature. You just have to look at chimpanzees, for example. They're not spending all of their time mating or eating or hunting or looking for food. A lot of the time, they're just spent in nature. And this was the case for thousands and thousands of years. And then somewhere around the 15th century, when the printing press was invented, we started getting a lot of really readily available printed material. Of course, there's a benefit to this. This aided greatly in the advancement of human science. But also, something that we know from this time is with the development of the printing press also came an explosion in what are called conspiracy theories. So many people were burnt as witches. This didn't become so much of a problem until the 18th century with the advent of the Industrial Revolution and the steam engine. The printing press, coupled with the steam engine, meant that printed material basically doubled in the span of about 30 years. There was one individual in the 18th century who is said to have read everything that was printed in his era, in the English language, I guess. But now that's no longer possible. It's not even imaginable that one person could read even a fraction of the new material that comes out every year. And the problem is, on top of that, there's all this stuff on the internet, and most of it is absolute garbage. It's useless disinformation. But we have this kind of underlying feeling that we might be missing out on something. So we spend a lot of time looking at the internet to find out what's going on. And generally, it's all kinds of crazy shit. Especially these days, we've got somebody like Trump, and every day he's doing something that's more crazy than the last thing, and he's doing it to hide the last thing he did. And it's not just him. And because of this feeling like we don't want to miss out, we're spending a lot of time looking on the internet. Now, the problem is when you're oversaturated with stimulus and information. I mean, it's not just information. For example, in your downtime, you might be watching movies. And everybody these days, or most people, rely on streaming services. And they kind of binge watch things. So there's a continual stimulation, there's a continual absorption of information. A lot of it's garbage, and certainly a lot of the movies are just filled with garbage. It's just violence, etc. And then very little time spent just being quiet on your own. For example, communing with nature. And so there are signs of the effects of this negativity everywhere in the modern era. In the 21st century, it's like the world is on fire. And everybody's kind of traumatized and also getting a bit overexcited, overreacting. This is what tends to happen. People's emotions are very high. And primarily, what did the Buddha teach? The Buddha taught us that we have to learn to control our minds. We have to suppress our negativity and also increase our virtuous actions. And the basis of this is in what we call training the mind. And that involves three things. That's study, contemplation, and meditation. Meditation itself is a type of habituation. And primarily what we're trying to do is habituate ourselves to virtue. And virtue isn't just about keeping rules. A virtuous mind is a peaceful mind. It's a mind that has less desire, less agitation. In my opinion, if we are to survive as a race, then we need to let cooler heads prevail. We can't have people just getting overexcited and over-emotional all the time, making snap decisions that could have really drastic consequences. And so my opinion is you shouldn't listen to the apocalyptic soothsayers like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. They profit from us getting overexcited. They profit from us seeing the world to be a dystopic place, a place where there is almost no hope. For them to profit, we need to be desperate. We need to be desperate, we need to be traumatized, and we need to be outraged. And all of these things are negative for our own mental health, but also for the future survival of the planet. As I said, what we need ultimately is for cooler heads to prevail. And a meditator is somebody who is a stable individual, somebody who is of few desires and easily satisfied, but also somebody who doesn't overreact when difficult situations arise. And so, as I said, the most important thing is to tame your mind. And that means to reduce negativity, but also to habituate yourself to positive acts. But principally, what you need to do is retain an altruistic mind.